I want to start by making sure everybody in here understands the seriousness of what's going on. We're losing somewhere between 82 and 88% of our young people. When they leave the home, they're not just leaving the home, they're also leaving the church. In fact, Carl Martiano said 75% of all children raised in Christian homes who attend public schools will reject the Christian faith by their first year college. I mentioned last night that when I started doing this, I was teaching on things like atheism, evolution, humanism, Islam, and yet today it's been ratcheted up to where we've got the LGBT plus, radical feminism, socialism, all of these things that are vying for our children's attentions, pulling them away from God. And I don't think this congregation is immune to that. Two words that I want you to think about as we dive into the application section. How do we fix some of this? First word is the word teach. The second word, diligently. In fact, if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open them up. Deuteronomy chapter 6. Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting in verse 4, the Shema. The call, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one God. He then gives this long set of instructions to youth ministers. No. Daycare center workers. Nope. School teachers. No. Who's he talking to? He's talking to parents. And notice right up front he says, these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. Put a big fat period there, asterisk beside it, highlight it, because before you can get it into your kids' hearts, you got to get it in your own. And that's a step I think we might have skipped over for a generation or so. We thought, we got to get them this stuff, and the parents didn't actually have it themselves. He then goes on to say, you shall teach them to your children diligently. Now let's be honest. We can't teach our children diligently if all we use our homes for is a pit stop, where we refuel, wash our clothes, crash at night, get right back up, get out. Satan has convinced us we got to be involved in all kinds of activities. And just to kind of let you see visually what I'm talking about, there's two containers of ping pong balls on the screen. The one on the right has got 3,000 ping pong balls in it. Represents how many hours a parent has with their child in a given year. The one on the left that you can barely see, it's got about 40. That represents how many hours your child would spend on average in a Bible class for a year. Now, I know some of you are like, wait, there's 52 weeks. My kid is here every week, and that's 52. Yeah, but by the time you start to look at how much time they're actually in a class learning, you're already down to 40. The point being, if you think that little vase of 40 ping pong balls is going to be enough to do what needs to be done, to stem all of the worldly stuff, you need to wake up. And by the way, I'm not letting anybody off the hook. Turn 2 chapters before to Deuteronomy chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 9. Only take heed to yourself, diligently keep yourself, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. Teach them to your children and your what? Your grandchildren. Wait. You mean when my kid hits 18 and leaves the house, I'm not done? Folks, listen to me. That's a lie from Satan that our culture loves to share. The idea that your child, they grow up, they leave the home, I'm done with them. Don't have to worry about them. That's whatever. According to this passage, your job is not done until you take your final breath. You teach them to your children and your grandchildren. I have 4 kids. 2 at home, 2 are married. Now, do I still invest in all four of them? You better believe it. The two at home, they're going to get a little bit different training than the two that now have their own homes. I told my boys, when you leave my home, that is now your home. I'm not going to interfere into that because you are to leave and cleave, but I'm still going to be your dad. And I'm still going to invest in you. I'm still going to send you podcasts I want you to listen to. Hey, have you checked out this book? In fact, this one's so good, I'm just going to go ahead and order it. One click, Amazon. It's on your doorstep tomorrow. By the way, have you read this article? That's what it means, to invest and pour into your children. By the way, if you live far away from your kids, it looks more like this. Hey, what was the sermon about this morning? What did you do to get ready for? What are you doing with your kids? Where you're investing, you're making sure you're plugged into their life. Ultimately, what it looks like is you got to remember your home is your number one mission field. I believe in mission work. In fact, both foreign and domestic. 4 or 5 times a year, I'll go overseas. I would do overseas mission work. But if I ever forget that my home is my number one mission field, folks, I've missed the mark. There's a lot of times where when I travel, people will contact me and they'll ask me this question. They'll say, hey, can your wife come and do a ladies' day? They always think, well, if the guy speaks, then his wife also speaks. And I'm going to tell you, right up front, I could tell you almost verbatim what my wife would tell you. She's been asked several times. She will thank you for asking her, and then she will flat turn you down and say no. And she'll go on to tell you the reason. She will add something like, I still have 2 children at home, and I feel like my place right now is still training them up. Now, there's a lot of people that hear that and they think, oh, she's missing out on these opportunities. She could have crowds, dozens of women, hundreds of women. Let me tell you what that woman is doing. So when my oldest son was 17, he came to me, he said, Dad, I want to start preaching. I thought, okay, he'd been going out with me some. We've been practicing, learning the art of speaking. He was writing his own sermons by that point. So I put a little thing on Facebook. Anybody need a fill-in preacher? Holler at us. Congregation, about 30 minutes away, jumped on it. We just lost our preacher. We're down to 12 members. We need a preacher. I told him, I said, I'll fill in when I'm not on the road. I got a 17-year-old son. He would love to kind of cut his teeth a little bit. They said, send him. So we did. He did Bible class. He preached that morning, preached that night. They offered him the job on the spot. And my first reaction was, oh no. I'm being honest with you. I really didn't. I thought, I don't want my son's fire to be put out by this dying church. There were 12 members. My 17-year-old son looked at me and said, Dad, you've always told us we need to be using our talents. I'm like, yeah, why are you listening to me now? So I said, if you want it, take it. So he did. 3 times a week, he's doing a lesson. And they started growing. They get up to like 20 people. He's on fire. They're on fire. Congregation's got a little life to him. I still remember, he called me one day. He said, Dad, what are you doing Saturday? I said, well, I'm doing a seminar. Wow, what's up? He goes, well, we're actually having to clean out one of the rooms they hadn't used for kids class. We finally got some kids. We need to clean it out and have it for Bible class. I thought, that's awesome. They keep growing. A year or so goes by, my son comes to me. My wife and I still remember, we were in our bedroom. He said, I think I met the woman that I want to marry. We find out about her. Elder's daughter in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I'm one of those mean dads. I'm like vetting her, looking, checking her out, making sure. Turns out she'd been stalking our family for a couple of years. They get married. He moved out. He's still preaching. And that little congregation loved on my son and his wife, and it kept growing. Until about 2 years later, when he called me to say, "Hey, Dad, I think we're probably ready to do like full-time work," which I was laughed at. I was like, "You're already doing like full-time work." At that point, he had a secular job through the week. He worked with Amazon. He actually got in on the ground floor when Amazon started doing deliveries. At age 21, he was making six figures with Amazon. He said, I think I'm ready to do full-time work. So what are you talking about? He said, well, there's a congregation in Decatur, Alabama looking for a full-time guy. Would you support me? And I was like, son, you know I'll support you in whatever you do as long as you're faithful. He said, well, I think I'm going to go interview. I looked at him and I said, you know they're not going to be able to pay you what Amazon pays you. He said, yeah, I know. We've thought about that. The day he left that little congregation, they were like 60 plus members. From 12 to 60 plus. 3 weeks roll by after he leaves. My phone rings. Hey, Brad, you got another son, don't you? Now, I tell you that, which, by the way, my second son, he's doing fill-in preaching all over Middle Tennessee right now. I tell you that because I want you to understand their mother, every day, invested in them. They had Bible every single day. I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Yes, I did teach them some things, Christian evidences, poured into them, but their mom was there every single day pouring into them. And now those boys are taking that message out to a whole lot of people. So do I think that her time has been well spent? Oh, yeah. So we are loaded for bear at our house. We're not just raising Christians, we're raising warriors for Christ. If I were to ask you, what kind of legacy are you leaving? Are you really, truly thinking about what your legacy will be? Do your children honor, respect, and love the same things that you do? If you got a Bible, flip it over to Exodus chapter 20 for a second. Let me show you something. Exodus chapter 20, very popular chapter. God is handing down the 10 commandments. I want you to notice the first 4 of those commandments are what I call vertical. And by that I mean they have to do with our relationship with God. He uses 4 out of 10 to make sure we understand He comes first. Commandment number 1, don't have any other gods before me. I come first. Commandment number 2, don't carve anything. Don't make anything graven image look like me. Number 3, don't mess with my name. Number 4, don't mess with my day. You keep the Sabbath holy. First 4 commands, vertical. He then uses the remaining 6 to talk about how we deal with each other. Horizontal commands. And before thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, before any of that, notice what the very first horizontal command is. Honor your father and mother, that your days in the land may be long. If you don't think that is important, ask yourself what happened to those people. And then flip over to the New Testament, book of Romans, where Paul here, he is writing to Christians in Rome, and he mentions the fact that, man, a lot of them have just gone off the rails. In fact, as he's talking, it's sounding a whole lot like America today. He mentions the fact that God has given them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting, verse 28. So he's going to give you a list of things that are not fitting. Listen to what he says. Being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliceness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They're whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things. What's the next one? Disobedient to parents. Wait. You mean Paul is putting disobedient children into the same category as murderers, haters of God, homosexual? Yeah, he is. So do I think that what we're talking about is important? Vitally important. And you look at me and you say, but Brad, it's not like they come out with an instruction book. To which I would look at every man in this room and say, yeah, well, if they did, you probably wouldn't read it anyway. Because you only look at instruction books if there's a bunch of parts left over. But I would argue they actually do come with an instruction book. And maybe, just maybe, we haven't always looked at this book as an instruction book for raising our children. Let me show you what I mean by that. Turn over to 1 Samuel chapter 3. 1 Samuel chapter 3, very, very familiar passage where you've got Samuel's very first prophecy. Remember Eli, he's lying down, he's old, and God starts calling Samuel. Verse 4, the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, here I am. So he ran to Eli, and he said, here I am, for you called me. He said, I didn't call. Lie down again. He went and he lay down. And the Lord called yet again, Samuel. So Samuel arose, he went to Eli, and he said, here I am, for you called me. He said, I did not call, my son. Now lie down again. Remember, finally, Eli realizes, hey, that might be God. Now, most scholars would put Samuel about the age of 6 or 7 when this is happening. So what are some things as a parent that I can glean from this account about raising a 6 or 7-year-old? Number one, notice Samuel obeyed. Look at the text, verse 4. The Lord called Samuel. What do you want? Is that what he said? Or did he say, here I am? In fact, number 2, notice he was fully respectful. So he ran to Eli and said, here I am, for you called me. Now, I'm not going to pick on anybody in this room, but there are parents and children who occasionally, instead of having a very respectful conversation, it all takes place through this right here. Notice what he did. He ran to Eli. So you got the child going to the parent. That's interesting to me because sometimes the kid expects the parent to come to them. Number 3, you remember Eli said, hey, that may be God calling. Verse 10, Samuel answered and said, speak, for your servant hears. By age 6 or 7, our children need to understand that there is a God and that this world doesn't revolve around them. It revolves around Him. We got a lot of young people today. The world is telling them, hey, it's all about you all the time. They Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, and guess what? God is still on His throne, and it's all about Him. And you look at me and you say, that's nice and all, Brad. Yeah, that's a 6 and 7-year-old. I got, 12, 13, 14. I got one of those green-eyed teenage monsters. To which I would say, that's okay. Let's take a look at Luke chapter 2 for just a minute. Let's talk about, what about a child that's a little bit older? What about a child that's, say, 12, 13, 14 years of age? Pick up with me in verse 41. His parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. When they had finished the days, as they returned, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem. Joseph and his mother did not know it. But supposing him to have been in the company, they went a day's journey. They sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. So when they didn't find him, they returned to Jerusalem seeking him. And so it was that after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. You got a 12-year-old boy who is by himself for at least 3 days. What are some things that, as a parent of a 12, 13, 14-year-old, I should expect from my child? Number one, we should expect our 12-year-olds to have a sense of responsibility, purpose, and destiny. By 12-year-old, they need to understand that they're here for a reason. And that reason is not just to play video games. It's not just to earn a bunch of money. It's about glorifying God. Number two, we should expect our 12-year-olds to have a burning hunger to understand truth and pursue wisdom. Now, I say that today, and it kind of breaks my heart because oftentimes in the church, I look out, most 12-year-olds, the only thing they have a burning hunger for is this right here. Burning hunger for truth. Number three, we should expect our 12-year-olds to be totally obedient. We saw this with Samuel at age 6, age 7. By age 12, it ought to be a pretty much done deal. And let me just tell parents in this room, I know it's not fun disciplining children. I had 4 of them. But I also know pay me now or pay me later. And what I mean by that is you can either instruct them to obey and do the right thing when they're young and the rest of their life not have to wrestle with it, or you can skip that stage and spend their older life wrestling with it all the time. Number 4, we should expect our 12-year-olds to be consistently respectful. Again, we saw this with Samuel. And you may look at that and think, wait a second, that's not in the text. To which I would look at you and say, if Jesus Christ had not been obedient and respectful, I promise you he would have been thrown out of the temple. I promise you. This is a 12-year-old young man who knows how to conduct himself without his parents around. It's a big deal. Number 5, we should expect our 12-year-olds to have a keen sense of discernment, especially about the company they keep. It matters who our kids hang out with. In fact, think about this. Could Jesus have gone to the red light district of Jerusalem if he'd wanted to? Oh, he could have. But he chose to go to the temple. Number 6, we should expect our 12-year-olds to be totally committed to do the will of God. By age 12, 13, 14, they need to understand that, yes, they're going to have a job that pays the bills, but their real career is to take up their cross and serve Jesus Christ. That's their real job. Finally, number 7. We should expect our 12-year-olds to have an unmistakable godliness in their life. They, just like Jesus, should look different from the rest of the world. By age 12, 13, they should realize, you know what? I'm probably not going to wear the same clothes as some of my friends wear. I'm not going to listen to the same music. I'm probably not going to watch some of the same shows. And yet, if I were to ask you, what is a true look across the church today reveal? Like, for instance, are our kids listening to the same music as the world? Are they playing the same video games as the world? Because there's a good chance, if they are, that they're in the world. In order to do this, what we got to do is we've got to parent. Anybody can make children. It takes somebody special to parent them in a Christian fashion. 3 words that I want you to think about: knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. These are 3 characteristics that happen at 3 different stages of development. So when kids are really, really young, age 2, 3, 4, 5, we start giving them knowledge. And if you don't think a 2-year-old can learn something, you need to wake up. When they get a little bit older, we give them wisdom. That is how to do what God wants us to do. Then when they get about 16, 17, 18, when they can use logic and rhetoric, that's when we tell them why we do what we do. But again, all of this requires parenting. Now, there are different styles of parenting. I'm going to share a couple with you. See if some of these sound familiar. Like, for instance, absent parents. This is a parent who basically they don't do any of the teaching, none of the training. They want everybody else to raise their children. Yeah, well, the Bible speaks of that one. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 15, the rod and rebuke give wisdom, but a child left to himself bring forth shame to his mother. Absent parenting is not going to get the job done. By the way, what I've noticed, absent parents want everybody else to raise their children, and then they get mad when their kids turn out to be wild. It's like, what did you expect? Or how about this one? Haphazard parents. Now, these are parents who want their kids to go to heaven. They just don't have any plan, no vision. In fact, they are so busy just going from ball practice to recital to everything that it's like their taxi service. Again, they want their kids to go to heaven. They just don't have a plan of how that's going to happen. Or what about abusive parenting? These would be somebody who is using threats or fear to get their child into the church. And let me just point out, if you're using threats or fear to get your children in the church, they will leave the church. Okay? Because when they hit 18 and they leave the home, they're going to rebel against everything that you held dear. The one that I think is epidemic today, the one that I think is really plaguing the church, is spineless parenting. These are parents who basically they're allowing the child to make all the rules. Let me give you a scenario. It's the start of a school year. Young lady, she wants to buy some new clothes. So she and her friends, they go to the mall and she buys a scud. And you guys know what a scud is, right? It would be called a skirt, but there's not enough material. It's just a scud. She comes home. Her mom sees it and says, "You can't wear that." To which that young lady then proceeds to go to her dad crying, big crocodile tears, saying, "Mom doesn't love me. She thinks I'm ugly." Dad pats her on the back, says, "It's okay. You can wear that." Who's really running that house? The daughter. Now, as a side note to this one, you also have friendly parenting, and that would be parents who basically want to be friends with their children. Let me point out to you, God didn't call you to be a friend. He called you to be a parent. And I'm convinced if you do a good job parenting, that friendship will be there later on. I told you guys I have 4 kids. The 2 oldest, Reese and Will. There is not a week go by that I'm not texting, they're not texting me, we're not seeing each other, sharing thoughts, calling each other. I don't run their house. That's their job. But I sure do get a lot of calls that I love. "Hey, Dad, what do you do when the car starts making this noise?" "Hey, Dad, could you come over and help me put this table together?" "Hey, Dad." Again, what used to be just me telling them what to do has grown into a friendship. Do I still act as their father? Absolutely. I'll always be their dad. But we go out to eat together. We play pickleball together. We goof off together. Understand what Satan is trying to tell you is bring your children up in the nurture and admonition of the world. What we need today, if we're going to beat this thing, if this congregation is going to be different than every other congregation, if we're actually going to beat the statistics, we need intentional parenting. Deliberate parenting. That is, parenting with the purpose of getting your kids to heaven. And so, with passion and with zeal and with fervor, we teach our children to teach their children. And let me just point out, we've lost some of the passion in the church. Folks, we ought to be on fire, excited. We ought to be if we are truly saved, we ought to be pretty fired up about that. Sometimes I look out at people, we're singing, "Oh, happy day." You look like you just had a root canal. Or when we all get to heaven, we all sound like you're going to a funeral. Really? Folks, if heaven is real and we're saved, that's a pretty exciting thing. And so, with passion, with zeal, we teach our children to teach their children to teach their children until Jesus comes back. My wife and I, we have a coffee shop down in Columbia, Tennessee, and we've got about 20 baristas that we have hired, a lot of them members of the church, a couple of them are my kids. If you were to ask them, what does Mr. Brad do every day when he comes in? I guarantee you could line all 20 of them up here and they'd tell you the same thing. They would look at you and say, well, he usually goes in, slings his backpack on the floor, and then he comes down the back line talking to each one of us, asking us how we're doing. Because I do. I look them in the eyes and I want to know, how's your day going? And they know when I ask, how are you doing? I don't want the Church of Christ for your answer. I'm fine. No, that's what we do to each other on Sunday. I want them to say, I'm having a crummy day, and here's why. Or I'm having a great day, and here's why. Or I'm struggling with math. Or I'm not getting along with my sibling or my mom. I want them to really actually talk to me. And then if you were to say, what does Mr. Brad always say when you ask him how he's doing? 99% of them would say, he always says he's phenomenal. Because I do. Why? Because I'm saved. And because I know, as has already happened multiple times, when they look at me and say, why do you always say you're they open that door, you better believe I'm going to bust it down and tell them why I'm phenomenal. Because I've been washed by the blood of Jesus Christ. Because I don't have to work. Even on days when I got to go to the D&B and stand in line for hours, I'm still phenomenal. And so with passion, we take this to our kids. But again, got to be deliberate. What does it look like in real time? Number one, a deliberate parent is a parent that prays with and for their children. I tell people, if you wait until your child's born to start praying for them, you waited too long. Start praying before. Before you ever meet them, be praying for them. And then when they get born, you continue to pray with them, and you listen to their prayers. You want to know what's really on the heart of your children? Listen to them pray. You find out what they're scared about, what their dreams are. I had told you guys I have 4 children. I have 3 scruffy boys and 1 princess named Claire. I have been praying for my daughter's future husband since before she could walk. She's heard her dad pray for the Christian young man that God is preparing for her before she ever knew what marriage was. She'll tell you. Yep, my dad's been praying for this Christian young man. You know why? Claire's 20 years old. And I know at some point in like the next 30 or 40 years, some dude's going to come to my house, knocking on the door, wanting her hand in marriage. And if she opens that door and he's not a Christian, I want her to close the door realizing that's not who we've been praying for. Pray with them, pray for them. Number two, you got to be a good example. I've said this in a lot of different congregations. I hope you'll hear me say it here loudly and clearly. The sermon you preach with your life at home is much louder than anything that anybody can say from that right there. You have to set the example at home. Doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. One of the things that I am proud of is that the Brad you guys hear speak on a weekend seminar is the same dad they see in our house in Franklin, Tennessee. I don't flick switches. I know there are guys out there that put on the preacher hat and all of a sudden they become holy and they preach holy and all, and then they step down and they act like the world. They talk like the world at home. They act like, and all of a sudden their kids are gone but when they get in that pulpit, they're so pompous and you know why the kids are gone? Because they saw an act up in the pulpit. And they know deep down what that person's really like. Because you can fool a lot of people. You can fool your Christian family, your coworkers. But your wife and your children, they see it. You got to set a good example. Number three, deliberate parenting entails instruction. Here's what that means. Things like integrity, work ethic, honest. A lot of this stuff used to be taught in school. We don't teach it anymore, which means it falls back to the parents that need to be teaching it anyway, really. A couple of things to think about here. There's a lot of different things we need to teach them, but also having that time together, that means something. I have a 17-year-old son. He's got a Silverado truck. Old, it leaks oil. He thinks it's a 2026 Ferrari. He wouldn't trade it. If you were going to try to give him a Lamborghini, he wants his truck. Loves his truck. He came to me and said, Dad, I need to learn how to change oil in my truck. He's finally learning. Oil costs money, by the way. I was like, yeah. Start filling up your tank, changing the oil. Yeah, that's good for you. He said, I want to learn how to change the oil. Now, I learned when I was young how to change oil. I could change oil probably about 12 minutes. But I know if he's with me, I just added at least another 10 minutes. And I'm an impatient dude. I like to get things done. But maybe, just maybe, I need to remind myself, it's not just about changing oil. It's about spending time under a truck with a 17-year-old son who I'm supposed to be shaping and mentoring and molding. And it may be under an old Silverado truck that a topic comes up that we really need to talk about. Deliberate parenting also entails discipline. Yes, I'm one of those mean parents that believes in the Board of Education. You know why? Because the Bible speaks about it. The Bible talks about the Lord chastens those he what? Loves. Now, let me just, for the record, because I know y'all are recording it, let me make sure everybody hears me say this loud and clear. I do not condone any abuse, ever. Okay? In fact, if you were to ask my 4 kids, did y'all ever get abused? They would be like, yeah, he didn't take us to get ice cream a couple times. That's their kind of abuse. But do I think you need to discipline your children? Absolutely. Proverbs chapter 23, starting in verse 13, do not withhold discipline from a child. If you strike him with a rod, he will not die. If you strike him with a rod, you'll save his soul from Sheol. By the way, I have 4 kids. I discipline those kids differently depending on the kid. I've got one child, if I snap my fingers and point at him and look at him sternly, he is so tender-hearted, his eyes will start welling up. I promise. Even to this day, his eyes will start welling up. I got one child, if I snap my fingers and point at him, he thinks I'm doing a jig, and he'll start jigging. I discipline those two totally different. But here's what I know. I know a child that does not respect, honor, and obey his earthly father is highly likely not to respect, honor, and obey his heavenly Father when he leaves home. Deliberate parenting entails consistency and persistence. I tell people it's the hardest job you'll ever do. Take you to the highest highs and the lowest lows. And let me tell you, consistency is a big deal. There's so many times it would be so much easier to do something else. Put in the effort. I know in this room, as I'm looking at you, there's probably some people who are thinking, well, that's all good and all, but you don't understand, Mr. Brad. I'm in a single parent home. My spouse and I, we got a divorce. Or I'm in a weird situation, to which I would look at you and say, that's okay. In fact, turn in your Bible to 2 Timothy chapter 1, where Paul, writing to Timothy, he says, greatly desiring to see you, being mindful of your tears, that I may be filled with joy when I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. Who actually do we give credit to for filling Timothy with this knowledge, this foundation? Mother and grandmother. All right, what about his dad? Oh, his dad was a pagan. His dad, we learn in the book of Acts, he was a Greek. His dad. So Timothy was growing up in a home where you got one who's a believer, one who's not a believer. How did they do it? Again, look at 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 15. That from childhood you have known the Holy Scriptures, that you were able to make them wise for salvation through faith, which is in Christ Jesus. In other words, when you really need to start? When they're little bitty. And you keep it up. Before I open it up for your questions, I'm going to do 2 things. Number 1, I'm going to give you a couple of what I call Brad's advices. Then we're going to talk for just a second about what do you do if your kids have already left the church. So, Brad advice number 1, surround yourself and your family with godly examples that you can grow from, learn from. My wife and I, the lady on the screen with my wife, her name is Deanne. We have known them for 20 plus years. They have children that are a little bit older than ours. We met this family and hit it off well. Husbands liked each other, wives liked each other, kids liked each other, grew together. Brian and Deanne opened up their life to us and said, hey, here's some areas where we got it right. Here's some areas we got it wrong. Here's some things you may want to watch out for. And you know what me and my wife did? We soaked it in like a sponge. Find some people who you look at their life and you go, that's what I want. What can I learn from them? Number 2, know your children's friends. We always told our kids, we aren't going to let you go spend a night with just anybody, but you can have anybody you want come to our house. And the reason is because we wanted to know, what is their language like? How do they treat adults? What are they really good influences on our kids? I had a friend many, many years ago. He told me he was about to invest, I think at that time it was either $1,000 or $1,500 into his bonus room to make it what he called a Coke room. He's going to have a running Coke fountain and popcorn machine, all this. And at the time I thought, that's kind of extravagant. That's ridiculous. And then he told me why he was doing it. so that everybody in the neighborhood would be at his house. He wanted his children, and I thought that might be the best investment he's ever made in his life. Know your children's friends. Number 3, use everyday situations to teach the truth found in God's Word. If you go to the movies, talk about. If you go to a museum that's got evolution, talk about it. If you see 2 people who are not behaving in a Christian way at a restaurant, talk about it. My family, man, we know. We had code signals, words, eyes. Something would be happening over here. We'd look at each other and be like, yep, we're going to be talking about that one later. Because our kids understood everything was a learning opportunity. If you're not doing family worship at home, let me encourage you. Start. What do I mean? I mean, bring your family together, sit together. At our house, we called it Bible time. Okay? Sometimes we actually opened the Bible, read Bible passages. Sometimes we had to deal with certain behavioral characteristics that needed to be kind of whittled down. So we would talk about those, read stories about those. We would oftentimes sing songs together. We got to a point where I was having them memorize different things, and if they didn't know it, I'd shoot them with a Nerf gun. And it worked great until I figured out they liked being shot. My son, oldest son, when he got older, he said, Dad, I want to write a book about what we did, Bible time. He said, there's a lot of families out there that want to do it. They just don't know how. And so here's what he did. He literally laid it out where if you've never done this in your house, it gives you a song to sing, Bible passage to read, what the Bible passage is talking about. Then it has questions for older kids, questions for younger kids. So let me encourage you, if you don't do any kind of Bible time at home, start doing it. If for no other reason, it will bring your family together. It calms your kids down before they go to bed. It really, really will help increase your faith and their faith. I could spend a lot of time on it, but I'll just say, if you don't do it, by the way, older people, you need to be doing it too. What does it look like practically? If I were going to start this, I'd never done it before, here's what I'd do. I'd take the book of Proverbs. Proverbs has 31 chapters. Do a chapter a day. Every single month, you got a chapter. What can you learn from the book of Proverbs? Take a look. Justice, kindness, generosity, self-control, righteousness, truthfulness, gentleness, contentment, integrity of character, humility, graciousness. All of these characteristics are covered in one book of the Bible. So do I think that maybe I could use that book and get some family time out? Yeah, I think so. Psalmist wrote these words. He said, like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. We are God's archers. Our children are God's arrows. We got to think about what direction are we launching. Real quickly, again, before I open it up for your comments, your questions, what about if your child has walked away? And again, in this room, there's probably one or two sets of parents that sitting there thinking, yeah, I wish I'd heard some of this many years ago. Let me share with you very quickly 8 things that you can do. And again, if you want my PowerPoints later, I'm happy to make those available. Number 1, be persistent but not overbearing. You are not going to nag your child back into the church. Simply do this. Hey, we're having a special thing. Just want to make you know you're invited. By the way, have you read this book? Have you seen this article? I hope you'll listen to this podcast. Number 2, don't compromise. What do I mean by that? Let's say your family's coming in for Thanksgiving. They're going to be there Thursday to Sunday. They tell you we're flying out on Sunday. It's going to be awfully tempting to miss church. Be with them when they're leaving on that Sunday. Don't. They need to understand you love them, you want to be with them, but God comes first. Also, notice the last one on there. Grandparents in this room, I know you love your grandchild. Please don't hit the like button if she's wearing a skirt. Okay? If she's in a picture online, inappropriate, or you got a child, grandchild that's holding a big beer can, do not hit the like button. In fact, what you really need to do is get on the phone and say, hey, let's go have some coffee. We need to talk. Number 3, be sure that they know that you're taking their name before God every single day, and then do it. Folks, I think in the church we've forgotten there really is power in prayer. Tell them. I have looked at some people, and so far I got 100% success rate. I've looked at some people who I knew were on the cusp of obeying the gospel. I'm one of those mean, rude people. I just walk up to them and I'm like, you need to understand, you're now on my prayer list. You will not win. You will obey. And they get this look like, oh, okay. And I tell them, I'm like, look, I got God on my side. You're going in the water. One time, did it, told it to a young lady. I was literally leaving to go get on a plane. As I'm going down the aisle, you know what she did? She went and grabbed her parents and said, I need to go get baptized right now. She didn't even want the whole realm of my prayers descending on her. Pray for your kids. Number 4, do everything you can to train your grandchildren. It may be that your grandchildren actually are able to get your kids back in the church. Yes. Number 5, get faithful siblings on board. So let's say you have more than one kid. You got one that's faithful, one that's not. Hey, slip them a 20. Tell them, hey, go take your brother or sister to coffee. Find out what's wrong. Like, why? What can we do? Is there anything we can do? Where's an area that we can help them in their life? Number 6, be the best in-laws you can be. I know there's some of you in here that maybe your child married a non-Christian. You feel like that non-Christian pulled them away from the church. And sometimes it's like, oh, you just don't like that. There's going to come a day, likely, where they're in a valley of life. You want to be the one they turn to during that valley. Number 7, appeal to your children's Christian friends or people they respect. So I always point out, in a lot of congregations, there's a candy man or youth guy, somebody that a lot of times the kids will gravitate towards. Call him up. See if he'll take them for dinner. Talk to them. Try to pull them back. The last one's going to seem a little bit radical, but I've actually seen it work before, and that is include a letter in your will. Because it may be in that pit of life, that valley where they are grieving your death, that you can remind them, look, this doesn't have to be the end. And so, again, reach out and see if you can bring them back. I know I've given you guys a lot to think about, chew on. I am going to open it up for a couple of questions. I'm not going to keep you late because I want to make sure everybody rested up for worship in the morning, mentally engaged. The floor is yours. Questions, comments? If you don't ask me questions or comments, I get to ask you questions or comments. Yes?
What if your child is still living at home, is an adult, it isn't completely gone from the church, but it's kind of teeter-tottering?
Okay, as I understand your question, what if your child is an adult, still living at home, not completely gone, but kind of teeter-tottering? So if you think about it from a medical perspective for just a moment, I always kind of come back to medicine because that's what I was trained in. I personally would say your child is, if they're not in ICU, they're starting to head that way. Not necessarily in critical care, but they definitely need some attention. They need some medical attention to get them to be healthy again. What does that look like? That's going to look like we may want to get rid of certain things that we think are pulling them away. And And it may be that phone, it may be the TV, the internet, whatever. As long as they're still under my roof, guess what? I get to make the rules. Anybody that lives at my house, it's not an option whether or not you're going to worship. That's what we do. Sunday, I don't care if you're renting a room above my mom's house. Sunday morning comes, guess what? We're all going. Everybody's going. So that's not an option. If you pay their phone bill, guess whose phone that really is? It's yours. And so there's some things that I would start talking to them very seriously about. At the same time, plug in and start studying with them. Sometimes their foundation is not there. And so maybe it's go through some Christian evidence material so that they really understand, oh, there is proof for why we believe what we believe. Oh, I didn't realize that we have proof for X, Y, Z. Because a lot of times, 17, 18, 20-year-old kid, they see that proof and it's like a light bulb finally goes off and they're like, okay, yeah, I get it. Monitor who they're hanging out with. There are a lot of young people who've been pulled away from the church because of who they're hanging out with. If that means you've got to make sure that the right friends are around, make sure the right friends are around. Because their soul is too valuable. Good question. Other thoughts, comments, questions? Yes, sir. Are you just waving at me? Okay. Other comments, questions? All right, before I let you go then, what's the hardest part about raising kids? Did you say let them go? Let them go? Yeah. It is hard, but remember, that's what we're training them for. Somebody told me one time it's like when you set the form on concrete. And those of you that have ever done this, you know what I'm talking about. If you remove the wood forms too quick, what happens? It doesn't set right. But also, if you leave those forms too long, it can also mess it up. You try to take them off, you end up chipping it, breaking it, whatever. So you got to know when to take those forms off.
I got a question.
Yeah.
In this world, young adults, a lot of them, especially in their 18, 19, 21, 22 years old, they are persuaded through the gospel and have a determination to stick with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you alluded to, or as you mentioned in this lesson, there's tests that come along from them that can be extremely painful, and it hurts them very, very deeply. We have a son who was engaged, and he was all in that lady who he helped lead to Christ. Things were looking really good.
Yep.
And she decided to follow the persuasion of another, and decided to lead him and broke off an engagement.
Yep.
And he's got a heart that's as big as an elephant. I mean, he's the kindest, the gentlest, loving young man. I think any of us who would know him would agree, especially. And so in that pain, that deep anguish and pain, he was really hurt.
Yep.
And where's gotten out? But his faith is still intact, but it's been beat down, and he's taken on some worldly things that he just seems to think, or the new girlfriend seems to think is all right,
Mm-hmm.
and that this is the way it can be. And is there a time, his mother and I have tried to encourage him in trying to return to the church and be more faithful and try to be a leading example.
Yeah.
To just do it. But there's challenges there that have caused us to know needs to happen.
Let me start out by saying I've never been in that situation. So what I'm about to say is it's easy to say, but not necessarily easy to do, having been there. I've tried really, really, really hard to teach my kiddos that their relationship with God comes before everything else. And that people are probably going to hurt them one day because we're fallible. We are humans. There's no other hurt like church hurt, if some of you know what I'm talking about. I say that hoping my kids never experience that kind of pain, but if they do, I want them to be able to fall back on that relationship, this relationship being even stronger than what their relationship was with that young lady. Again, easy in theory, really, really hard when you go shell out a couple grand for a ring and you're on your knee and you think everything's going one way and you got your life planned out. I teach lessons on evil, pain, and suffering a lot because that's an area where young and old, old people want to know, why is this happening to me? And I always point them back to, this wasn't God's original plan. God's original plan, we would be with him in a garden and it would be wonderful. But sin wrecked the plan. And because of sin, we now are in a fallen world. Sin is all around us. And so don't be mad at God, be mad at the sin. And then we talk about some of the reasons why God would allow evil, pain, and suffering. It sounds like he may need to hear some of those reasons just so he can kind of go, okay, yeah, I get that. I don't like it, but I at least can understand it, so that he can then kind of continue his relationship with God. Because a lot of times what happens is we're growing in spiritually, we have something like that happen, and we either do this or just stagnate. You want him to keep doing this. And so think of it in terms of, what can I do to keep that projection growing rather than him stagnating or even shrinking in his faith.
We continue to try to encourage him and do all the children to know that whoever you're with, like you mentioned about your daughter,
Yeah.
To make sure that whoever you marry is going to be there to help you get to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They're going to be hand in hand, going to be ones that
Yep.
probably get both yourselves.
And keep steadily reminding them his eventual marriage is going to be so much better and wholesome if he and his spouse are both Christians, faithful Christians. The happiness, the longevity of their relationship, if they are both Christians, it's going to be so much better. So, I'll give you my email address. We'll chat. Any other thoughts, comments? Tomorrow morning we start at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock in the morning, we are tackling, trying to think what the title is. Why I Believe the Bible. I know some of you are visiting from other congregations. That's okay. Gary said y'all are all meeting here tomorrow, 10 o'clock, so just put a sign on the door. No, I'm just kidding. They are going to have a meal. So for those of you who like to eat, I've told them I don't do liver. Anything but liver is good. We're going to have, it's a filter organ. It's like eating an oil filter. Plan on being with us if you can. Stay, have a meal with us. And then after the meal, we're going to have another lesson as well. Would love to have you, your family, your friends join us wherever you are. I do hope that you'll gather and worship God in spirit and in truth tomorrow. Appreciate very, very much your attention. I'll turn it over to somebody for